All right, peoples. Today I'm going to show you guys in this video a garden and orchard tour. So today we're going to look at two different properties. We have this meadow here in the front that is mainly ornamental. It has tons of life, insects, birds, animals. It's incredible. I'm going to show you the process, a little bit of how we got this planted. We're going to briefly look at this naturalistic design. Also, we're going to look at my orchard. We're going to look at the backyard of this property, which has a new orchard and a new garden. And so we're going to look at the gardens, we're going to look at the orchards, the fruit trees, the figs, and we're going to look at this meadow, and it should be a nice one. Stay tuned to the end for me, please. And do me a favor, hit the like button for me right now. Hit the subscribe button for me right now. There's so much information I can share with you guys. So first and foremost, I think naturalistic design is just absolutely striking. Look at the colors and textures. I was deeply inspired by Pete Ulof and naturalistic designer. We've got some saponaria down here and some phlox. Also the alyssum here. This is basket of gold, and we have some of the alliums like Globemaster. We got the tulips, but it's really impressive to me that everything looks as nice as it does without the flowers. It's just the textures, the colors, the contrasting shapes. And to me, this is the bright spot in the front yard, is like right here. This was just nailed perfectly. That's a yellow smoke tree, and I really appreciate the yellows and the silvers and the dark red colors of the leaves. And this to me, I think, really just brings it all in. But I'm worried it's going to be too bold. You know, I've got a lot of different things that are coming in. This amazingly pink, beautiful Japanese maple. That's some bronze fennel. You've also got in here, this is some black lace elderberry. So not a lot of green. I mean, there's some just straight green, but you know, I think to me, the beauty is really mix and matching these greens and silvers, yellows, and bronze too. There's the bronze foliage that some of these grasses can give. One of my other favorite plant combinations is this. This is spirea, heather, and phlox, and they just next to each other make it really work. Haven't really filled everything in just yet because we've got a lot of plants still to put in, and I've been always just constantly changing things. But you can see all of the plants down here. These are plants I started in the greenhouse. I did this last year and the year before, and filled up the front yard. It was all grass before we moved in here, and I really just wanted to remove the lawn. I didn't know much about ornamental plants, flowering plants. As you guys know, I was mainly just growing edible food, and that was my main mission and goal. And there's a whole world of plants out there that I never really paid attention to. And so first we started with the annuals when we first moved in. Grew a lot of those, whatever I thought was beautiful. Again, started from seed, and then last year we found a lot of the naturalistic design work and started plugging away those plants. Some of these really young plants, like these are some asters. I literally just started them from seed and plugged them in the ground, or divided them, I'm not sure which. And they're going to take a while to really fill this space in. They're not really going to do much until really we get later in the season. So what I decided to do in the spring is I really put a lot of phacelia and scatter that seed packet that I had all over different parts of the yard that really needed it. And so it's creating this matrix layer of this phacelia down here. It's very close to flowering. It's a really nice pink. Kind of goes with a lot of different colors. And this will do well in the spring before it gets too hot. And once it gets a little too hot, it starts to die off and die back, and then everything else should really just take over in its place. And every year this will come back in the spring. It kind of reseeds itself. It just serves a function in one time of the year. Gives a nice little burst of pollen. The bees love it. and it looks nice, and then it's gone. As we go to the backyard, the gardens are looking incredible. We had to put up, though, a deer fence. And this was actually the cheapest way I thought I could construct a solid deer fence. These long T-posts, they're actually, I think, 10 foot tall. And then I bought these Adjusto gates, they call them, on Amazon to create the gates with these little pieces here that hook in on the posts. This is a special design thing that you can find on Amazon. I can put links to this in the description, which then allow the gate to sit on the posts. Because last year, all we really did, even though I planted a lot of this into an orchard last year, and we had some gardens going on in here, a lot of it was just for the deer. They were eating this up. So we've got a number of different apples, apricots, pears. These are the things that I wanted to plant here with all the, orchard stuff and all the fruits and things that I've tried over the years. These are the things that are, I think, worth growing. Now, they're less effort, easy to care for. I've got a mulberry also over here. You can barely see it. There's a couple persimmons back there. Not that I need any more persimmons. What I really should have planted was a pawpaw, but I didn't think I'd be here on this property long enough to see any fruit from it. Back there is a young Salavatsky. We got the figs lining this whole back area. This is really where all the orchard is. You got the bees over there, of course. You might be thinking, well, Ross, these apples are not really the easiest fruit in the world to grow, and they're not. So I've grafted onto these rootstocks mainly crab apples. Really tasty crab apples, not just any old crab apple. You got, I think, let's see, what do we got here? Cherub, Tomboy, Trailman, Chestnut, Wixen. These are some of the varieties I'm going for. Here's one that I just grafted at the beginning of this season. Here's one that we succeeded on last year. And all the grafts of apples, man, they're just so easy to do. This is one we did last year. This is either Chestnut or Wixen. So I'm really happy to report now the deer are gone, and I really went full in on planting this thing, and I went the extra mile to get good soil. This is just mushroom compost that I get delivered around here. You don't get any topsoil mixed in. It's really well broken down, has a huge amount of organic material and a huge amount of nutrients in it. It holds water well. It's the perfect texture for germinating any seeds. These are the carrots. We just germinated these. In fact, most of this is just germinated. You can see the kale mix that I planted there, the arugula here, more arugula over there. There is a lot of this. Even though I had access to this greenhouse, we've got, of course, all kinds of different types of brassicas and broccoli that truthfully look the best I probably have ever looked. Fennel. A lot of this I did not start from transplant. So it's amazing what you can just direct seed if you have the right texture. Spinach for this time of the year, that looks incredible. The brassicas look incredible for this time of the year. Oh my God, I think we've had the perfect year so far. I could not have asked for better weather, rain, sunshine. The raised bed that we had last year, that we put some nice compost in here. This bed had compost in it, and this bed had compost in it where the potatoes are. Nothing else had any compost. And we just try to make do with very limited compost and the deer pressure. I enjoyed it, but it was heartbreaking. And so, yeah, now that we've added much more organic material, I got 5 yards delivered for just these beds. And it was probably a good 2 to 3 inches per bed of good organic mushroom compost. And look at this. This is all mostly direct seeded. These are onions from set last year. The peas we direct seeded back there. There's some potatoes coming up in here. I did transplant in the dill, and these are some alliums of some kind. The herbs I wish you guys could smell just how amazing this cilantro is. It's unreal. Also down in here, plenty of breakfast radishes already. And in fact, if I don't get them soon, they're gonna start getting a little bit pithy. So I think I'm gonna probably pickle these, harvest them all and pickle them. Over here is an interesting crop we're trying for the first time. This is a rat tail radish, and I've got two varieties. You can see there's the difference there in flowers. I was curious to figure out which rat tail radish was going to be better, so I ordered 2 seed packets from 2 different seed companies. What they do is they form flowers, and then they form these like seed pods, and you eat the seed pods. You cook them up, you stir fry them, and they're supposed to be really good. Garland chrysanthemum, something like that. Interesting leaf. You know, like a salad mix. It's got a mustardy flavor, I think, there in the aftertaste. Not bad. Different types of basil. Thai basil, lemon basil. Types of Genovese that I've been interested in. This is called huacate. Mexican or Peruvian mint, black mint it's called. This is really impressive. I've been really enjoying this. Very strong, interesting flavor. They grind it into a paste and you eat it with different Peruvian foods. This is lovage. It's the leaf, basically it's celery, but you grow it for the leaves. Every year I'll grow that stuff and I'll freeze it, and that way I have lovage all throughout the year for soups and whatever else I want to put some nice celery flavor in, stocks, that kind of thing. The spinach, the same thing. You know, we can cook it now and eat it, but it's pretty good to freeze this stuff, you know, and then you just cook it later. Kale is the same thing. I'm not really in a rush to harvest a lot of this stuff just yet. You just eat it throughout the year, freeze it. It's as fresh as you can get, other than just eating it straight out of the garden. All right, so we're here on the second property. I must admit, this year has probably gone as perfect as you could have hoped. The garden looks amazing, and I'm telling you, I have done very little work in this garden over the last couple years. Over the years prior, I had set up this garden for success by just adding lots and lots of compost. Again, it's the same mushroom compost that I get delivered at the other property we looked at, and it just has changed the soil and added so much life to it. There is still a good couple inches of organic material on top of the native clay that we have here. You can see the native clay down here. It holds a ton of water, and usually I don't have to worry as much about watering the garden. I think if you want to be really productive and have a great garden, you should water it. I did water a few things this year. Yeah, this garden's looking unreal. We've got fennel, and the fennel is looking fantastic. I have to credit that not just to the soil here, but the quality of my transplants. We've got some basil of different varieties in here. The peppers, we literally just put the peppers and eggplants in over here. You've got lettuces, things that I actually transplanted in, and I didn't think these lettuces and all the things that I transplanted right in here would do well. The transplants were not very good, I'm gonna be honest. It was some of the lowest quality transplants I've put in the ground in a while of pretty much anything, but they actually look fantastic. So credit to the soil. Now we've also got some younger fruit trees along here. We planted an apple. I think this is blue pearmain. This is a mulberry that I really came up from seed, and I grafted onto it Girardi. Girardi is just an incredible mulberry. Look how productive this thing is. And this tree was not very healthy. It took a long time because I dug up the seedling after I grafted it and planted it here, and it took a while. It took a couple years for it to really get its act together, and this year it's finally doing that. And I imagine next year this will be a really incredible tree. One of the best things I ever did back here was plant some more grapevines. This grapevine here is just straight up in the garden. It's called Centennial, this variety. Shout out to Lucille at Whitman Farms for recommending it. This vine has done wonderfully, and just giving some of these grapevines some extra sunlight has gone a long way, because over the years, when I first originally planted them against the fence, I had 3 varieties here: Himrod, Interlochen, and Mars. And both of the green ones, Interlochen and Himrod, died. And I think they died because, first of all, the vines are not that vigorous, at least here they weren't. And eventually they kind of just got shaded out. So we've got an apple here that kind of took over, this honeyberry kind of took over. And so Mars, I eventually just kind of extended it upwards along the fence, this way along the wire, and then also this way along the wire. And it's worked out. This Mars has survived, and it is producing plenty of clusters that are actually getting some sun. You know, the problem is going to be kind of what a lot of grape growers, you know, are so particular about how they grow them, and they want them to be, you know, if you have your wire down here, then there should be another wire up here, or even a few sets of wires to really have them arch like this in like an umbrella pattern. And if you don't have the wire system, you can't really do that. And kind of you know, the idea is the grape clusters can get hit by the sun, and they're typically better, and yeah, it makes sense. It should be correct. The more sunlight, by directing the shoots out into the sunlight, you're maximizing photosynthesis and making your vine stronger, healthier. The fruit clusters should be better and higher quality, and you know, there's so many benefits just having more sun, obviously. But even if you don't really have a lot of sun, which I don't have, this vine does fine, and the grape clusters don't even get hit by the sun. I wrap them all with wax paper bags to prevent black rot, which is also one of the best things I ever did. And you know, the vine is it's doing what it's doing. And you don't have to have a perfect trellis, you don't have to have a perfect system to get really, really tasty grapes. I mean, extremely tasty grapes. You just have to limit the number of clusters. So a vine like that Mars that stretches a pretty far distance, I'll probably only limit that this year to about 10 or 15 clusters, and that's it. This here I think is Saturn. Planted a Saturn here, and then of course Centennial. Centennial goes all the way over here along the garden and then up this arbor, and both of them meet, Saturn and Centennial meet here at the top. And you can see they're already putting out clusters up there, and that's really going to be amazing to help them get the sun that they want and need. Because this is really going to expand the area in which they're growing, where nothing really is. I mean, there's a peach up there, but this means the more sunlight they get, the more grape clusters, and the area that they take up, the more grape clusters they can afford that they can have. It's the same thing with the peaches and the stone fruits. The more sunlight they reach, the more fruits you can have on those trees without losing quality and flavor and sweetness, and also size. So I'm going to really risk it and push the Centennial vine this year because it takes up a ton of space. I may even push that to close to 30 clusters and see what happens. So when I'm coming through here very soon, I'm going to be bagging all these grape clusters. First of all, I might thin out some of these shoots. That's a definite. And then I'll make a decision as to what grape clusters I want to keep, depending on where they're positioned, depending on the size of them, how they look. If they look pretty good, like this here is a really nice cluster compared to this one here, which is much smaller. Maybe it's further behind in development, but you can definitely tell as they go on. That's another smaller cluster right there. Kind of eventually what the cluster is going to be like and what it's going to do. Here's another one down here that looks quite nice, and each shoot will probably only get one cluster, even though this shoot down here has got two really nice clusters. Space them out really nicely, bag every single one of them, And black rot, guys, is a serious disease for these grapes. So if I'm not doing that, if I'm not bagging them, I'm not getting grapes. Totally honest with you, I'm not getting a single grape. They'll all mummify, they'll all be inedible. That's just a really serious disease. So I just bag everything, and it works out. And you know what else is nice? It hides them from the birds. It hides them from any insects. The birds don't see them, and then they're allowed to really sweeten up on the vines. You can even just let them go and they turn into raisins on the vine. Here's a plum that we actually espiered. This is a bubblegum plum. And I usually wait for these trees to self-thin themselves before I start actually hand thinning them. But I also look for signs of plum cucuрлio damage. And there definitely is plum cucuрлio damage. I've already seen it on some of these plums and also on the apricots. However, what's really nice this year, because the ground was just frozen for so long, and then the heat has just turned on like a furnace, these plums and apricots are expanding so quickly. And even if they get bit, I found in the past, for whatever reason, I think this is it, but the apricots kind of outgrow the bites of plum cucuрлio here. I have a feeling because these plums are getting so big so quickly, we might get away with not having to spray. But totally honest with you, I really should spray these, because there has been not a single year where I actually have eaten some fresh plums, like in a significant quantity, that were really tasty. Here's the pawpaws. They look pretty darn good. Lots of flowers up in here. And you can see that these flowers already have set their fruits. There's two little pawpaw here. Let's see if I can get this in the frame. There you go. See those little, like almost like fingers there? Each of those is a pawpaw. So, oh, here's another cluster. This one I think has got 4 fingers there, 4 fruits. These trees do phenomenally well. And I think if you have to plant some kind of fruit tree, or you want to plant a fruit tree, it should be kind of at the top of your list in the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. They're just completely disease problem free. You don't have to spray them. Persimmons are the same thing. Got a lot of persimmons. These Americans are looking fantastic. The Yostaberry back there has gotten some huge size to it. And some of the other currants and gooseberries I've planted, they look really good as well. Here's a Hinomaki yellow. It's a lot of fruit on a really small plant that's pretty much in the shade, the understory of these American persimmons. It's kind of absurd. Same thing here with these red currants. I went back to red currants. I dug them up years ago and got rid of them. But I decided, you know what, I really appreciate currants, especially in a fruit salad. Totally honest, a really nice fruit salad is gonna have mint. I find that's the secret, one of the secrets. Lime or some kind of citrus juice in there to make the sweet fruits kind of balance itself out. Or you've got some currants. And then of course you just need some crunch. So like you can cut up some Asian pear or really hard apples. Like Gold Rush is probably the perfect apple for a fruit salad. Behind me is the gumi. And the gumi, again, without failure, it just flowers on pretty much every single node. Even on the water shoots from last year, there's some water shoots right here. I cut out most of them to try to propagate them this year, and we didn't get any, unfortunately, again. But even on the water shoots, the growth that's coming out of here, pretty much every node has some fruit on it. So for me, this is like, I planted one at the other property because I like to spend most of my day out here eating these fruits. And even when they start turning a little bit orange or towards that red color, I'll start eating them. Some people like to wait until they're, you know, really red, and then they dry on the bush like a gummy bear. That's what their name is, and that astringency goes away. But those tannins are really, I think, in the fruit that makes it, for me, something like wine. So I like to eat them not when they're super sweet. I like to eat them when they're a little bit actually on the orange or red side. And you know what I find is this isn't like another example of something that when I eat these in higher quantities, I just feel really, really good. One of the cooler things in this area back here is the autumn olive. I know we looked at the gumi, but this is related. It's supposed to be invasive, but my plan is to eat all the fruits off of it and not share any with the birds. I'm curious to see, because it will ripen in the autumn, whereas the gumi ripens in the spring, pretty much first thing in the spring. Is that gumi, or is it going to taste enough like a gumi so where I really enjoy it? But then also it's like could it be like having gumi later in the season? A white gold cherry. This thing will thin itself out a little bit, but that's just a crazy amount of cherries. The whole tree looks like this. And it does pretty much every year. The cool thing about white gold, by the way, is it doesn't really get a whole lot of rot. It doesn't get a whole lot of damage from plum curculio. Here we've got the plums and apricots, and there is some damage on these apricots. I've already seen quite a bit of the plum curculio. Here's one right here where we've got this bite mark. There it is. And the plum curculio will bite every fruit, maybe even a couple times, depending on how they're feeling. And then again, once this bite mark's there, then the female comes in, lays its eggs, the larva, and then the larva eats its way from the inside out. It's pretty ugly and disgusting, but it's a fact of life, growing fruit. And so what I'm doing, I have to thin these apricots. I mean, just look how many there is. It's absurd. And again, part of this is just we never got a frost. This is normally what they would do if you don't get a frost like this, or like we would normally get some kind of frost that thins them for me. So, you know, that's why I got this ladder here, and I'm going to be going around to these two apricots I've got, removing the ones that don't look very good. This one's got a whole bunch of damage. Trying to space them out as well, you know, so if you've got like this length of branch is only, I don't know, 6 or 7 inches, you can only have maybe 2 apricots on here. So I'm just going to remove all of them just for demonstration purposes, and try to keep the ones with good blush on them. That means they've gotten some pretty good sun, and you can already know by you know where the sun is positioned in your yard, kind of what to remove and what not to remove. Here's some more plum curculio damage. Going to remove that one. Just anything with the damage on it. And it would be probably best to remove the fruits from the yard completely. Here's a apricot that looks like something really got at this. And by the way, if I don't remove this, this will turn into an apricot, you know, with this damage here. It's not going to be a very good one, and maybe it will end up ripening properly, but you know, you got to, this is a good reason why you're doing this, not just, it's kind of nice that the trees overproduce and then you come in there and thin them to select the very best ones. It's a little bit of extra work and headache, and sometimes I wish, you know, I didn't have this chore at this time of the year. There's already so much to do. But hey, and you know what? When you thin, this is another really important tip. It's way better to have less fruit than more fruit. You'd be surprised just how many fruits this apricot's going to produce. I mean, it's close to 20 feet. The canopy is really wide at this point. I've really let it go. I wanted this tree. I love apricots so much. It's like one of my favorite fruits. And you know, this tree is going to produce probably, if I really thin them out and space them out well, I could probably get away with 150, maybe 200 fruits. Maybe. I don't think that's likely. I think I'm pushing it with 150, but think about 150 apricots. Think about that in front of you, and you got to eat them all. Now, I don't mind preserving apricots. I love dried apricots. Also, preserving them in syrup, unreal. But you can cook, you can even cook with them, cook them down a little bit and then preserve them in a little bit of syrup. Oh my goodness. Add some citrus in there. Whew. I'm telling you. But that's the thing, like, I wish I had more apricots, to be totally honest with you. But at some point, you're gonna get to this point where, if you're not already there, where you just got too many fruits, you don't know what to do with them. And so instead of having, you know, 300 apricots or whatever, I'll settle for 100. I'll settle for 150, you know? As long as they're good, really tasty, high quality, maybe they're even bigger because you've thinned them out. To me, that makes a whole lot more sense. You eventually will realize that. In the beginning, I think a lot of us are just greedy. We want as many as we can get, which I don't blame you. And you know what? Sometimes I'm looking at this and I'm like, there's not really a whole lot of rhyme or reason to what I'm doing in terms of thinning. I'm just really, when I really do this for real, off camera, I'm just stripping off as many fruits as I can. Because again, there's a ton of fruit on these trees, and you just cannot, they cannot support all of this. And even though it's not going to be perfect, you know, at least just getting them off the tree, just get them off the tree. At some point, you're like, there's so many. I can't be like so methodical and be like, oh, I really want this one to turn into an apricot. I don't want that one to turn into an apricot. Just remove the fruit. I think that's the main message. This year, we're finally going to get some Sago off my own trees. I've been saying for years that Sago is the very best one. That's what it means, the very best one. We finally got some flowers. I think partly this tree didn't flower for years because it's just too shaded right here. But we've got flowers all over this thing. We should get a really nice crop. I find it's not the very best one in terms of taste anymore. After really eating a lot of persimmons, my preferences are towards Hoshigaki first and foremost. Fresh eating, Sago doesn't really compare to like a fresh Rosianka. I'm sorry. And also the Americans, I think, are better than some of the Sagos. It could be a close call. But really, I think what Sago shines and is meant for, you're supposed to turn it into Hoshigaki. Peel the skin, let them air dry for 20 to 30 days. That's really, I think, where they shine, they transform. Any of the Asian persimmons just become amazing. So now we're looking at the planting we have here by the street. It's quite a busy main street, and you can see we've got a number of things going on over here. There's asparagus. Someone has described when I given some tours here to some friends, I would just take some asparagus out of the ground, and it's right here by the curb, and they called it curb asparagus. They're just like, he just pulled asparagus out of the curb. It's amazing where you can just grow food. We've got blueberries. My favorite among them is Draper. This is a huge, this blueberry tastes incredible. It looks like you could taste the antioxidants in it. I did try some propagation this year on this, and it actually worked, but it didn't get me very far after the fact. The other really impressive fruit in here is the Girardi mulberry. I don't know what happened, but a truck, I think, came through in the parking lot and just totally broke off a number of these branches. So I just, you know, the tree doesn't look exactly that great, but you can see that there's another one over here, and I'm just kind of, it is what it is. I can net them, and I will have to net these, but it's just incredible how much fruit is in here. You guys, I'm sure you cannot comprehend it, but I'll just sit the camera here and give you like a decent view of the inside. There's fruit everywhere, and it grows so slowly. It's a dwarf mulberry just because of the quantity of fruits. It's truly amazing. Again, I had 2 seedlings, one that popped up here, another one over there, from birds, and I just grafted this variety onto both of them. It's one of the best things I ever did. Here's the Che above me. It's huge now. You know, to have a tree this big and for it to just drop fruit every year because it doesn't have a male, it's just a bit absurd, I think. And I find a lot of people, I keep hearing stuff where people keep claiming that they don't need a male. There's the beginnings there of the fruits. I just, look, if this tree is not fruiting at this point, I don't think it's ever gonna fruit. Let's be honest. Let's be totally honest with it, with ourselves. Yeah, look at the size of the trunk on this thing. You can obviously see how fruitful everything is around here. It's kind of incredible. Year after year, you just sit here and you look at this and you're like, how is it even more than last year? You know, and last year was amazing. The year before was amazing. You guys can do this too, and you can have all this very easily if you just have a little bit of land. You don't really even need a whole lot of space. This area back here, where the little food forest is that I have, man, that's really not a whole lot of room. This property here, in total, I think is a half of an acre, but the amount of space that I'm using on half of an acre is very little. The garden is only about 10 foot wide by 17 feet deep. I've got fig trees everywhere that probably for a normal person wouldn't have to be there, but just growing some fruit along the fence, on the curb, even by the street. Make sure you plant things by the street that people don't know what they are. The main takeaways for me is you got to learn how to prune. I know that's a little bit daunting for some people, but it's really not that difficult. Some trees even prune themselves. Most of them, it's very minimal pruning. I also find that putting down a lot of mulch goes a huge, long way. It goes a very long way towards actually getting your trees to maturity at a quicker pace. It conserves that water, helps build life, and your tree will just become more fruitful at an earlier date. I think you could save yourself here in my area at least a year or two just by mulching it versus not mulching it. If you have competing grass, you're gonna save yourself 2 years if you did otherwise. And also, things don't really need as much light as you thought they did. They'll benefit, no doubt. They will benefit with more sunlight, and you should always be trying to maximize the sunlight that each of your plants can get. But a lot of plants back here only get like 5-ish hours of light. Some over there in the corner maybe only get like 3 hours of direct sunlight. That plot over there maybe is about 5 or 6 nowadays. The west side of the property is about 7. The garden doesn't even get full sun of 8 hours of sunlight. You know, these grapes, they say full sun. Everything says full sun, full sun, full sun. You don't really need it. In fact, almost anything that's a berry is an understory plant in nature. So you can grow berries in the shade in very little amounts of light. Even larger trees that you would think of are like, they need that sun. Persimmons don't need a whole lot of sun. Pawpaw doesn't need a whole lot of sun. Plums, pears. I would say things that are more disease prone, put them in more sun. Things that are not as disease prone, you don't really have, doesn't really matter. Things that are more tropical, like my figs, Maybe you guys can actually get away with planting citrus or pomegranates and things like that. You want to give them a bit more sun. They can handle it. That's what they're more adapted to. And then I would say just get out there and, just get out there and start. By the time you realize that, by the time you plant something, and then a couple years later, before you know it, you're basically going to have some fruit.